Okay, so you know how people always talk about these huge construction projects, like the ones that are going to change whole skylines or connect entire regions?
Yeah, the ambitious ones.
Exactly. But I feel like we often hear about the grand vision and not so much about the nitty-gritty of making those things actually happen. And let's be honest, it's probably a pretty complicated business, right? I imagine there are insane deadlines and figuring out all the labor must be a nightmare. And don't even get me started on cost. They just keep going up and up.
Totally. I mean, even if you're not building bridges or skyscrapers, if you've ever worked on a project that was just really complex and had to be done quickly, you know the pressure, those constraints, the time crunch, resources, all that definitely affects the quality of the final product.
Absolutely. It's like a universal struggle. So today we're doing this deep dive. We're looking at how one of these big construction companies decided to do things completely differently with their big infrastructure projects.
And we're going to be using a case study that goes into all the details of how they did it and what the results were. Really good information.
Awesome. So let's just say the answer to these age-old construction problems might surprise you. Ready for this? Robotic bricklaying.
Sounds like something out of a movie, right?
Seriously. But they didn't just dream it up. This company actually made it a core part of their operations. So let's find out what led them to this and how they actually pulled it off.
Okay, so first things first, we need to understand the context. The case study lays out the problems they were facing, and it was a whole bunch of familiar things, a shortage of skilled labor, like actual tradespeople.
Which is a big deal.
Huge.
Yeah.
Also, there were inconsistencies with the manual bricklaying. Sometimes it was great, sometimes not, and that obviously affects the quality of the build.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Plus, like you said before, the costs, everything just kept getting more expensive, and that was eating into their profits. And all this was happening while the demand for new construction was skyrocketing, especially in cities. So they were under a lot of pressure.
Right. It's like all these problems just feed into each other. No workers means things get delayed, shoddy work has to be redone, and the budget explodes. I get why they were desperate for a new approach.
They needed a serious solution, like a total game changer. And that's where they landed on robotic bricklaying. They were thinking, what if we could build things faster, more consistently, and for less money? What if robots were the answer?
That's a bold move. Okay, so how did they go from this idea to actually putting robots on construction sites? What was their game plan?
Okay, so there are several key things they did, and they're all explained in the case study. The first one was all about integrating the robots into their existing workflow, which they called automated workflow integration. It wasn't just about like plopping a robot down and hoping for the best.
So it was part of a bigger, more digital approach.
Yeah, exactly. They linked the robots directly into their BIM system that's building information modeling, and they used digital blueprints. Think of BIM like a 3D model of the entire project where all the design and engineering details live. By connecting the robots to BIM, they made sure the robots were working with the same exact info as the architects and engineers. It's all about getting those plans translated into the physical world, brick by brick.
And no more crooked bricks, hopefully.
Well, that was the goal. See, they programmed these robots to lay bricks in these super precise patterns. So you eliminate a lot of the little mistakes humans make. And get this, they even built in real-time data syncing.
What does that even mean?
So let's say something on the actual site is a little different from the digital plans, or maybe there's a last-minute change. The system can adapt on the fly. It's pretty flexible.
Wow, that's impressive. So it's not like the robots are just mindlessly following orders. There's some intelligence baked in. What else do they focus on?
Quality control. They knew that just having robots lay bricks wasn't enough. They wanted to make sure the work was top-notch. So they added AI-driven quality control. Basically, they gave these robots eyes, like AI-powered vision systems.
Like a robot inspector.
Pretty much. The system constantly checks things like how well the bricks are lined up, if the mortar is consistent, and if the structure is sound. And, get this, they actually use machine learning. So they fed data from all their previous projects into the system, and the AI learned from it. So every time they laid a brick, it got better and better.
The robots are learning.
Exactly. And the result was a final product that was way more consistent and durable than anything you could get with manual labor. This constant learning is what makes AI so powerful.
I'm starting to see how this whole thing could work, but what about speed? I mean, construction projects are notorious for taking forever. Did the robots actually speed things up?
Oh yeah, that was another big focus. The case study calls this enhanced construction speed and efficiency. And this is where you really see the difference between robots and humans. Robots can work 24/7, they don't need breaks, and they don't get tired. And the data showed that the robots were laying bricks about twice as fast as even the most skilled human bricklayer.
Twice as fast. That's huge.
It is. And that means they could finish projects way faster and save a ton of money on overhead. Plus, they could deploy multiple robots at the same time, on the same site, or even on different projects. It's like having an army of super-fast bricklayers.
That's got to be a game changer for project timelines. But what about waste? Construction sites are notoriously wasteful, and that's a problem for the environment and the budget. Did they tackle that too?
Absolutely. They called this part reduced material waste, and it's a big one. See, with manual bricklaying, you always have some waste. Mortar gets applied unevenly, bricks get chipped or broken, or sometimes they have to be ripped out and redone. But the robotic system, it had these super precise mortar dispensers. And sensors made sure that every brick got exactly the right amount of mortar.
So it's a much more controlled and targeted process.
Exactly. And that meant they used way less material overall. They were being efficient, which is good for their bottom line and the planet.
Makes sense. Less waste is a win-win. Now, the big question with all this automation is, what about the workers? What happened to the human bricklayers?
Well, this is where they got really smart. They didn't just fire everyone. Their approach is called workforce optimization and safety improvements. Instead of replacing people altogether, they used robots for the most repetitive and dangerous tasks. The kind of work that leads to injuries and burnout.
I see. So the robots are taking on the tough stuff.
Yeah, and that freed up the skilled masons to do other things that required more thinking and experience. Things like managing the project, inspecting the work, and taking care of the robots.
So they basically upskilled their workforce.
Exactly. And by taking away the most physically demanding jobs, they made the work safer for everyone. Fewer injuries means lower costs and happier employees.
It sounds like they thought this through pretty carefully. But did it actually work? What do the results say? The case study mentioned they tracked their progress.
Yeah, the data validation section is really interesting. They wanted to see if the theory actually translated into real-world success. And they did a really good job of collecting data to prove their point. So first, let's look at the project completion times. They found that using robots cut the overall time it took to finish a project by a whopping 40%.
40%. That's incredible. I mean, in any industry, saving that much time would be a huge deal.
Right. And think about it. If you're a developer, getting your building finished that much faster means you can start making money sooner. And for the construction company, it means they can take on more projects. It's a win-win.
Absolutely. But what about the cost? You mentioned there was an initial investment. Did they actually save money in the long run?
Okay, so their cost-benefit analysis admits that, yeah, buying and setting up all this robot stuff wasn't cheap. But get this, they actually made that money back within 2 years. And after that, they continued to save even more money. It's because they were spending less on labor, they wasted less material, and they had to redo less work because the robots were so precise.
So even though it was a big upfront cost, it paid for itself pretty quickly. That makes a strong argument for investing in this tech. But what about the quality? I mean, speed is great, but did the robots actually build things better?
That's where the quality assessment reports come in. These were done by independent experts, not the company itself, and they found that the robots were 30% more precise than humans. That's a big difference. And because the bricks were laid so perfectly, the buildings were stronger and lasted longer, they didn't need as much maintenance, and that's good for everyone.
So they built things faster, cheaper, and better. Impressive. But how did this all translate into real-world success for the company?
Well, the case study calls it real-world impact, and they have a whole section on client achievements. They basically became known as the company that always delivered on time, which in the construction world is a big deal. Developers loved them because they knew their projects wouldn't get delayed, and that reputation helped them win even more big contracts.
Reliability is everything in this industry. And what about the sustainability angle? Did that actually make a difference?
Yeah, they called this sustainability and environmental benefits. They found that using robots helped them be way more sustainable. They were using fewer resources and wasting less material. And because the robots were so efficient, they actually used less energy overall, which is great for the environment. It's like they were building greener without even trying.
That's a big selling point these days. And all this must have given them a leg up on the competition.
For sure. Having this technology gave them a massive competitive market advantage. They became known as the innovators, the ones pushing the industry forward. And that helped them attract new clients, including government agencies and big developers who are looking for the best and most efficient solutions. They were winning bigger projects and expanding into new markets. It's like they reinvented themselves by embracing this new tech.
So they solved their problems, made their clients happy, and became industry leaders. Sounds like a pretty successful story.
It is. The case study ends by saying that this wasn't just about using robots to do a job. It was about using robots and AI to make the whole industry better. They raised the bar for how things could be done, and I think they inspired other companies to start thinking about how they can use tech to improve their own operations.
So, what started as a way to solve some pretty specific problems ended up being a much bigger deal. They basically set a new standard for large-scale construction.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, if they can do it with something as traditional as bricklaying, what other industries are ripe for this kind of change? What other seemingly impossible problems could be solved with robots and AI? It's pretty exciting to think about.
I'm with you on that. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, and it's definitely given me a lot to think about. It seems like this company took a pretty big risk, but it paid off in a big way. They proved that embracing new technology isn't just about doing things differently, it's about doing them better. And that's a lesson that applies to any industry.
Couldn't agree more. It's definitely a compelling case for exploring innovative solutions and embracing change.
So for our listeners out there, I'd say don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. If you're facing what seems like an unsolvable problem, maybe there's a robot out there waiting to help you out. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep innovating.